Most people view success as a shield against suffering. We assume that the person who always got the A, the one who is called prodigy or naturally talented, has a head start on happiness. But for many, early brilliance wasn't a gift, it was a cage. This is the gifted child syndrome. It is the psychological phenomenon where a child's worth becomes entirely tethered to their achievements rather than their humanity. You weren't loved for who you were. You were praised for what you could do. Today, we are exploring the 10 psychological pillars of the gifted child burnout to understand why your potential feels like a weight dragging you down and how to stop performing for a crowd that isn't there. The identity of the best. The first pillar is conditional self-worth. When you are labeled gifted early on, your brain creates a dangerous equation. Achievement skers love. You didn't learn to value your character, your kindness, or your curiosity. You learned to value your rank. In psychology, this creates a fragile high self-esteem. On the surface, you look confident, but that confidence is built on a pedestal of external validation. If you aren't the smartest person in the room, you feel like you are nothing. You don't just fail a task, you feel like your entire identity has been deleted. The paralysis of perfectionism. The second point is the gold medal handcuffs. For the gifted child, good is the same as failing. Because you were told things came easily to you, you developed a deep-seated fear of effort. If you have to try hard at something, your internal logic tells you that you're no longer a genius, you're a fraud. This leads to procrastination out of perfectionism. You don't delay work because you're lazy, you delay it because if you don't start, you can't fail. You would rather be the person who didn't try than the person who tried and was only average. The imposter in the mirror. Point 3 is chronic imposter syndrome. Because your early success felt like a natural trait rather than a learned skill, you never developed a sense of mastery. You feel like you've been faking it your whole life, riding on luck or a high IQ. You live in a state of constant hypervigilance, waiting for the moment the world realizes you don't actually know what you're doing. Every promotion or accolade feels like another brick in a wall that's eventually going to crumble. The social wall. If you were advanced as a child, you likely struggled to relate to your peers. Point 4 is developmental asynchrony. While other kids were learning how to play, navigate conflict, and build social bonds, you were praised for adult-like intellect. This creates a social gap. As an adult, you might feel intellectually superior, but emotionally stunted. You feel like an alien observing human interaction through a telescope. You understand the rules of social life, but you don't feel the warmth of it. The fixed mindset trap. Point 5 is the biological stagnation caused by a fixed mindset. Research by Carol Dweck shows that children praised for being smart perform worse over time than those praised for working hard. Since you were praised for the trait, you avoid challenges that might prove you aren't smart. You stay in your comfort zone, effectively hitting a ceiling in your career and personal growth because you are too terrified of the learning curve. You are a Ferrari that refuses to leave the garage because it might get a scratch. The burden of potential. Point 6 is the ghost of what could have been. Throughout your life, you've been told you have so much potential. This phrase, intended as a compliment, becomes a haunting presence. Potential isn't a gift, it's a debt you feel you must pay back to the world. Every choice you make, your job, your hobbies, your partner, is filtered through the lens of, is this worthy of my potential? You can't just enjoy a simple life because you feel like a waste if you aren't changing the world. The neglect of the easy child. Strangely, many gifted children suffer from a form of invisible neglect. Point 7 is the low-maintenance curse. Because you were smart and self-sufficient, your parents and teachers focused their energy on the problem children. You learned that the only way to keep the peace was to have no problems of your own. You became an expert at suppressing your needs, leading to an adult life where you are the stable one everyone relies on, while you secretly drown in silence. The sensory overload. Point 8 is overexcitability. Many gifted individuals possess a heightened nervous system. You don't just hear a noise, you feel it. You don't just see a problem, you obsess over it. This neurological intensity makes you prone to sensory and emotional burnout. The world feels too loud, too bright, and too chaotic. What others call anxiety, for you, is simply a brain that refuses to turn off its high-definition sensors. The loss of play. Point 9 is the extinction of joy. When every hobby you had as a kid was turned into a competition or a resume builder, you lost the ability to do things just for fun. If you pick up a guitar, you feel you must become a virtuoso. If you start a garden, it must be the best in the neighborhood. You have optimized the joy out of your existence. You no longer have hobbies, you have secondary unpaid jobs. The crash. The final point is the great collapse. This is the moment when the entire system you built your identity on begins to break under its own weight. It often arrives in your late 20s or 30s, when the gifted child fuel, the adrenaline of praise, pressure, and expectation, finally burns out. For years, intelligence may have carried you through life, helping you improvise, survive, and stay ahead without building real discipline or emotional resilience. But eventually, life becomes too complex to outsmart. Relationships demand vulnerability, careers demand consistency, and adulthood demands endurance. And that's when the wall appears. Suddenly, the strategies that once made you special stop working. This burnout isn't ordinary exhaustion. It's an identity crisis. You begin to question who you are without achievement. The pedestal you spent your whole life climbing no longer feels like success. It feels like isolation. And for the first time, you're forced to face the terrifying question: if I stop performing, who am I really? Breaking the pedestal. Healing from gifted child syndrome isn't about lowering your standards, it's about changing your foundation. The first step is divorcing your worth from your work. You have to practice being bad at something. Start a hobby you have no intention of mastering. The second step is redefining potential. Your potential isn't a target you have to hit. It's just the capacity of your vessel. Whether you fill it with world-changing achievements or simple, quiet moments of peace is entirely up to you. The final step is radical mediocrity. Allow yourself to be average in the things that don't matter, so you have the energy for the things that do. You were told you were special because of what you could do, but the truth is, you are special because you exist. The crowd you've been performing for has already gone home. It's time for you to take off the costume, step off the stage, and finally learn how to just be. Here's the truth. The tragedy of the gifted child is not that they fail, it's that they never felt allowed to be human. For years, you may have confused exhaustion with ambition, anxiety with discipline, and perfection with worth. But none of those things define you. Your intelligence was never meant to become your prison. Your value was never supposed to depend on applause, grades, titles, or proving your potential to the world. Real healing begins when you stop asking, "Am I doing enough?" and start asking, "Am I living honestly?" Because life is not a performance, and your existence is not a competition. The world does not need your perfection. It needs your presence. It needs the version of you that is rested, authentic, and alive. And maybe the greatest achievement of your life will not be becoming extraordinary, but finally giving yourself permission to be ordinary, peaceful, and free.